Hey, are you well? Happy? Good. I was glad to hear the title of the latest debate between Craig and the physicist Lawrence Krauss, because the title is "What is the evidence for the existence of God?" And I said, well, finally I will hear, or not, some real evidence for the existence of God, and not these philosophical proofs involving prepositions, syllogisms, conclusions, which are not always watertight. So let's hear the evidence.
Now, at one level, it seems to me indisputable that there's evidence for God.
No, it's not indisputable, because we've not heard the evidence yet.
To say that there's evidence for some hypothesis is just to say that that hypothesis is more probable given certain facts than it would have been without them. That is to say, there's evidence for some hypothesis H if the probability of H is greater on the evidence and background information than on the background information alone. That is to say, the probability of H on E and B is greater than the probability of H on B alone.
Don't be fooled by these equations. They're not even necessary. We can understand when you say it in plain language. It just seems more sciencey.
Now, in the case of God, if we let G stand for the hypothesis that God exists, it seems to me indisputable that God's existence is more probable given certain facts, like the origin of the universe, the complex order of the universe, the existence of objective moral values, and so forth, than it would have been without them.
No, it is not undebatable. We have not approved of the evidence. We have not seen that these are really facts, or not.
So, the question, is there evidence for God, isn't really very debatable. Rather, the really interesting question is whether God's existence is more probable than not. That is the probability of G on E and B greater than 50%? Now, I'll leave it up to you to assess that probability. My purpose in tonight's debate is much more modest, to share with you 5 pieces of evidence, each of which makes God's existence more probable than it would have been without it. Each of them is, therefore, evidence for God. Together, they provide powerful, cumulative evidence for theism. Number 1, then, the existence of contingent beings.
What is contingent? This is a purely philosophical term. What is philosophy? I will open a bracket here and try to roughly paraphrase a quotation from the eminent Polish philosopher Leszek Kolakowski from the recent past. He says, if the aspiration of philosophy was and is to comprehend intellectually the whole of being, and being, this is a concept, purely philosophical concept, like the being of this football, for example, completely separate from the football itself, its being, which does not exist. This is reification. Anyway, if the aspiration of philosophy is, or was and is, the intellectual comprehension of the whole of being, the initial stimulus was the awareness of human imperfection. Both this awareness of human imperfection and a striving to overcome this deficiency in some way was inherited by philosophy from myth.
The deepest question of philosophy is, why do contingent beings exist at all?
This fundamental human deficiency was given various names through the ages. The medieval Christian philosophy, the Scholastics, spoke about contingency. This term is derived from Aristotelian tradition. The Scholastic beliieves interpreted into Latin Aristotelian works De Interpretatione, where Aristotle is creating rhetorics, a way using contingent judgments to convince his opponent of his opinion, if it's right or not. Contingent judgments are judgments which predicate on a subject something that may or may not apply to it without altering its nature. Later, philosophers have criticized and refuted contingent, the idea of contingency, because they said that in order to have contingent beings, you need to have a necessary being who has created the contingent beings. The fact that man is a contingent being was a cause for his humiliation and worship of his creator.
By a contingent being, I mean a being which exists, but which might not have existed. Examples? Mountains, planets, galaxies, you and me. Such things might not have existed.
Hume criticized it as well, because he said, if you speak of contingent beings, you presuppose the existence of a necessary being.
By contrast, a necessary being is a being which exists by a necessity of its own nature. Its non-existence is impossible.
But this video is becoming too long. I will make one or two, probably two, following videos where I will speak about the 5 pieces of evidence that Craig gives, and we will see if we can accept them as facts or not. Bye!